Hello and welcome to the Bath Fizz and Foam YouTube channel. My name is Robin French-Smith and today we're going to talk about blooming baking soda for bath bombs. Before we begin though, could I ask you to like and subscribe to our video? It would be cool, be nice. Anyway, let's get started. So first off, we're going to start with dyes and how to bloom baking soda. So number one, please use gloves and use a scale. You don't have to use a scale maybe for some of this, but it is a good idea to use a scale, and then you can have more accurate, more consistent bloomed baking soda. So first what we're going to do is we are going to sift our baking soda so that we can get really good product where we can get the product on everything. There's not going to be any clumps or lumps or anything like that. Then we're going to take a tiny little bit of distilled water and make sure that you're using a heat-safe container for this next step because we are about to do something. We're going to heat it up because dyes work better when there's warm water, when you mix them in with warm water. So I like to heat it up for, I don't know, about 10 seconds in the microwave to get the water warm, and then we're going to add the dye powder to that. Now, a lot of people ask, how much water do you use? And the answer is that it doesn't really matter because you're going to have to wait for the water to evaporate before you use the powder. So, I mean, you want to use as little as possible because it'll take longer for the water to evaporate, but I've used like way too much before and it's been fine. So, anyway, just a little heads up on that. I like to take a little scoop of my baking soda before I'm going to add my dye water into the baking soda mix. And the reason I do that is because it makes it easier to clean that cup out. And then I'm going to get every single little bit of that dye water mix. And if you don't use warm water, when you go to add the dye, some dyes will like really easily disperse into the water, like yellow 5, for example, disperses into the water really, really easily. But other colors do seem to need a little bit more encouragement. And so having warm water can help a bunch with that. And then for this next step, you're just going to begin to incorporate that dye water blend into your baking soda. And you want to make sure that it's mixed in really thoroughly. You can do it. You're going to get so many arm muscles from making bath bombs. Not the cute kind that you can show off at the gym or anything like that, but yeah. And then we're going to allow the baking soda to dry before we use it. And so the next question is, what if we didn't bloom? What would happen? So in that upper left-hand corner, I'm taking that baking soda that we just bloomed and I'm putting it on a tray to dry. And while I do that, I'm going to compare with you on the main screen what the dye would look like in our baking soda. Same amount of dye, same amount of baking soda. What would it look like if we didn't bloom it? So one of the things that happens is the dye, the powdered dye, kind of beads up, makes little like beads, I guess. I said that and then I doubted if that was the right word. Anyway, it kind of beads up and it's really hard to incorporate it, and you have to go through and find all the little pieces and squish them. And then the main thing I think that you can see is the color difference, right? It's the exact same amount of dye, exact same amount of baking soda, and the one on the bottom was almost white and the top is like neon pink. So okay, so it's been a couple days or maybe 24 hours, and my dye is dried, my baking soda is dried, but because I got it wet, it's now clumpy, and I'm going to have to sift it again so that I can use it to make bath bombs. I don't want it to be clumpy like that when I go to make bath bombs. Now, if I'm not going to use this right away, sometimes I'll stick the clumpy stuff into a bag and store it and not even sift it, but I do like to sift it right away just because it's like one less step later on down the road. But you don't have to if you don't want to, but before you use it anyway, you should probably sift it. And now you can use this bloomed baking soda to make bath bombs or embeds. And you would just use it in place of the baking soda in your bath bomb recipe. Okay, so the next question is, how do we bloom lakes? And the answer is you don't. But here is how I use lakes. So whereas dyes, you have to make them ahead of time, kind of. I mean, it's a good idea too. Lakes, you can just add straight into your bath bomb mix when you're ready to make bath bombs. So I like to have all my powdered ingredients mixed together except for my citric acid, and then I like to have all of my liquid ingredients mixed together except for my binder. And if I'm doing this by hand, I will add the lakes before I add my citric acid. If I'm doing this in a mixer, it doesn't really matter. I can add it after I add my citric acid, but if I'm doing it by hand, it's obviously the process is slower and more time consuming. And so if I have my citric acid in there, I'm kind of on a timetable at that point. Like the minute I add my citric acid, my bath bombs mix has a lifespan of maybe 20 to 30 minutes. So I need to get moving. And if I'm spending a lot of time mixing my color in, that's cutting off the time that I will have to mold my bath bombs. So if I'm doing it by hand, I like to add my lakes before I add my citric acid. If I'm doing it in my mixer, I'll just add it after my citric acid. It doesn't really matter because my mixer can mix everything together fine. But so now the color is all the way incorporated into my bath bomb mix, and I'm adding my citric acid. And now I'm going to combine those together really well. And making sure that I'm blending everything together. And I'm gonna add my binder. I use water as my binder. You can use rubbing alcohol, you can use witch hazel, you can use whatever you wanna use. But I'm gonna use water as my binder. And then once again, I'm gonna combine everything together. And then I'll be ready to make some bath bombs with it. Oh yeah, perform a drop test. Hey, that's good. I mean, that's just good advice. That doesn't have anything to do with coloring, but perform a drop test. When your mix can pass a drop test, you're ready to go. Go make bath bombs. Okay, so another question that we get is, why did my colors fade? We get this a ton, especially when people are just starting out. I made bath bombs and it's been 2 or 3 days and now the colors are faded.
2 hours later.
Well, that's because dyes are UV sensitive. So the bath bombs on the left were colored with dyes, and the bath bombs on the right were colored with lakes. Now they both did fade a little bit, but obviously dyes faded a lot more, and that was just after 2 hours of being directly in the sun. Imagine if we had them at a farmer's market or something like that and they were out in the sun for several hours. So it can be really disappointing for people when they find that out. Another question we get is, will lakes color my water? And as you can see here, yes, they will. They will. Lakes, when you use a correct amount, I think a lot of people are used to using tiny amounts of dyes, and so they go into using lakes and they use tiny amounts of lakes. They don't get that color payout that they're looking for, and so they just assume that lakes won't color the water. You have to use about 10 times the amount of lake that you would use of dye. So that's something to keep in mind. So you use about 10 times more lake than you would of dye. And then they will, though, color the water. They'll color the foam. You'll get beautiful bath bombs. And then the other thing is that properly formulated bath bombs will not stain your bathtub. Don't even get me started on this, but properly formulated bath bombs will not stain your bathtub. It won't stain a dirty bathtub. They won't stain a bathtub at all. If somebody is telling you that there's reason that their bath bombs stained your tub is because they're using like natural plant dyes, they're lying to you. They're not formulating their bath bombs correctly, and that's why they're staining, or they're using too much color. But as you can see here, this was a very vibrantly, deeply colored bath bomb. It made the water a very pretty pink color, and it still did not stain. Another question we get is, will faded bath bomb, so this is the bath bomb made with dye, will a faded bath bomb color the water? And the good news is yes. So if you use dyes and your dyes faded and you're sad and you feel like maybe what's the point of it all, don't give up. Those faded bath bombs will still color the water. You'll still get really pretty foam. You can see around the foam where the water is getting colored, and the foam is getting colored. So a faded bath bomb is still going to color your water. It's just not, you know, if the design of the bath bomb, like the outer design of the bath bomb, depended on that color being there, then that might be a little bit of an issue, but it will still perform in the water really, really well. So that's not even something to worry about. And then once again, let me say it louder for the people in the back. A properly formulated bath bomb will not stain your bathtub. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to hear excuses. Do better. It's not good. It should not stain your bathtub. It shouldn't stain a dirty tub. It shouldn't stain a clean tub. It shouldn't stain an old tub. It shouldn't stain a new tub. It shouldn't stain a plastic one. It shouldn't stain a porcelain one. If it's properly formulated, it is not going to stain your tub. Period. I don't care if it's red 27, red 28, which are the most prone to staining. Okay? If you have bath bombs that are staining, you need to be adding more emulsifier like polysorbate 80 or surfactants like SLSA, which this recipe doesn't even have SLSA. So it just has polysorbate 80 in there, and you can see when it's done right, you don't have stains. So guys, I hope that this was helpful and informative for you. Once again, take a moment to consider liking or subscribing. I will leave links in the description below where you can find more information on our blog, on our website, and then in our Bath Fizz and Foam Bath Bomb and Bubble Bar support group on Facebook. That is all that I have for you today, though. Happy making!